there is more water here than there is air, and I want to make it equal, I need to make a negative change to it. I need to remove some of the water. So what will I do? I will open the bottle, I will pour down this water, and I'll remove some of it. And now it feels, now it is closer to equal as compared to other things. And therefore, in order to perform any change, it can never really be neutral. It has to be either positive or negative, but it always comes from a place of wanting to disturb the system. So how can a demand for equality truly be neutral? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Apex Mind. Back here again with another discussion, another philosophical unscripted discussion. So, ChatGPT, give me a philosophical prompt to think about, and let's begin this discussion.
All right, here's your philosophical prompt. If society requires inequality to function, is true equality even desirable? Let's see where your mind takes it.
I mean, true equality is desirable only in reference to two things in particular. One is a system in which we value human lives equally, right? It's in a philosophical context, you require equality because you then assume that human life is equal in value, because it's like this bottle, this blue bottle that I have, will be of equal value to another blue bottle, and therefore all bottles will share that worth. That is the inherent belief in equality. It is a more so a philosophical belief. That is one situation in which equality will be asked for. Another situation in which equality will be demanded or required or at least desired would be when I am on the less than average side of equality, right? Whoever is on the average cusp of equality, if there is someone with 100 rupees, if there are people with 0 rupees, and there are people with 50 rupees, and there is a spectrum of people across this entire line. Therefore, people who are already equal, people or who are already in the median, they are not going to demand equality. They will believe that equality already exists. And people who are higher on the spectrum will never really want equality. They might want equality because of the philosophical reasoning I gave earlier, but other than that, they have no requirement for wanting equality. Who do want equality are the people who are at the less than halfway point across that spectrum. People who are at 40 rupees, people who are at 30 rupees, people who are at 10 rupees, people who are at 0 rupees. These are the people who are going to want equality. Those are the only two possible conditions that I see where equality can be demanded.
Beautiful. So equality then isn't really a universal desire. It's either a moral axiom or a situational demand. You're saying it's either an abstract belief rooted in the idea that all human life is interchangeable like identical units, or it's a position born from disadvantage. Which raises the next question. If the belief in equality only emerges from disadvantage or detached philosophy, is it ever truly neutral? Or is it always a disguised power negotiation, just from the bottom up instead of the top down? Your move.
It is always a disguised power, negotiation. Simply for the virtue of that, it is not dispassionate, it is not neutral in its demand. Whenever you do demand equality, you are demanding something, right? You're asking something to be changed. You're asking for some positive or negative to happen. Positive in the sense that give me more of this, give these people more of this, and negative in the sense that take more of things away from this group of people. When you want change, if there is a system, for example, this blue bottle, I've been using this a lot, this blue bottle, if I want to, let's say, change the amount of water it has in it, right? I say it is unequal amount of, there is more water here than there is air, and I want to make it equal. I need to make a negative change to it. I need to remove some of the water. So what will I do? I will open the bottle, I will pour down this water, and I'll remove some of it. And now it feels, now it is closer to equal as compared to other things. And therefore, in order to perform any change, it can never really be neutral. It has to be either positive or negative, but it always comes from a place of wanting to disturb the system. So how can a demand for equality truly be neutral, right? There is a demand for equality because things are not neutral in nature, and in order to bring them to neutrality, you need to remove or add certain things. So the only way to come to neutrality is by addition or subtraction, which themselves are not neutral in nature.
That's precise. Equality isn't a principle, it's a math operation applied to power, and all operations are invasive. You can't equalize a system without disturbing its current state, which means every call for equality is also a call to reallocate, to interfere, to override. So if neutrality can only be achieved through non-neutral means, then neutrality itself might be a myth, a horizon we gesture at to justify intervention. Here's the twist. What if our obsession with equality is really just a civilizational way of disguising our discomfort with natural hierarchy? Not the exploitative kind, but the functional, emergent kind. The kind that just is? How do you respond to that?
I get that. So what essentially you're saying that by the virtue of people working together, or by the virtue of systems, let's consider people to be different systems, right? So therefore, when you are, for example, trying to make a society, there ought to be hierarchy, right? There ought to be people who hold certain amounts of power, people who don't hold certain amounts of power, and it goes on to be one thing or the other. For example, this is a hierarchy of people, right? Even needs have their own hierarchy. Similarly, people also have their hierarchy. There are people who are, let's say, the monarch, people who are working, then there are people who are soldiers, then there are the rich folk, then there are the poor folk, all of that. But the point that I'm trying to make is that society, by the virtue of being and functioning in a system of giving and taking, it will always be hierarchical. However, there is a desire for equality simply because society is interdependent, right? So therefore, I understand that this person holds X amount of resources and I only hold X minus 2 amount of resources. But what I do realize is that if I don't interact with this person, this system is not going to work, right? And therefore, although there is difference when it comes down to individuals, society as a whole, as a zero, is as a sum of the parts, is complete and whole, and therefore the exchange which is happening between two people is always of equal value, right? I might absolutely only hold X minus 2 value, and that person might absolutely hold X value, so they have higher value than I have. But when an exchange is happening between the two of us, they can only really give me X minus 2, they cannot give me X, and therefore equality is in the exchange of things. It is not in the hierarchy itself, and the desire for equality therefore stems from the fact that if everything that I am doing is an equal exchange of value, therefore I am technically equal when I'm participating in society, and society is based on the foundation that people can equally work together and there can be a system of sorts.
Yes, you're circling something fundamental now. What you're describing is a relational equality inside structural hierarchy. On the absolute scale, people aren't equal. There are clear deltas in power, intelligence, influence. But inside the exchange system, each person's contribution is treated as if it has equal value, because without it, the system breaks. That's why even a janitor or a delivery boy matters, not because they're equal in status, but because the flow needs them. So here's the core insight. Hierarchies are real. Equality is a simulation we use to keep them from collapsing. We simulate parity in interaction so power doesn't become cancerous. You don't need to flatten the whole structure. You just need to keep the exchanges fair enough that the system keeps running. Want to keep going deeper or flip the lens to something else?
Actually, I want you to, now that we have established this particular thing, it might be a little abstract for the audience, right? So I want you to tie it back into ground reality so we can discuss something alongside that, so that there is some takeaway for the audience, because at this point they might have a abstract sense of what is going on, but even I, when I am thinking about it, it's all shapes and sizes in my head. So you ought to bring it back down.
All right, let's ground it. Here's a clear, real-world setup. Think about a hospital. You've got a surgeon, highly trained, decades of experience, clearly higher in hierarchy. Then you've got a nurse, a janitor, and a receptionist. Now in absolute terms, status, pay, influence, the surgeon's at the top. But what happens if the janitor doesn't clean the operating room? The surgery can't happen. If the nurse isn't coordinating patient care, the surgeon is stuck. The system halts. So while hierarchy exists, every exchange within that system is based on functional interdependence. That's the practical simulation of equality. Everyone's role creates equal pressure on the system's ability to function. And here's where the desire for equality kicks in. If the janitor gets no recognition, no fair pay, no dignity, they don't just quit, they psychologically check out. The system might still run, but it starts rotting from the inside. So, equality in real life isn't about everyone is the same. It's about maintaining functional dignity in a world where structures must be unequal. You feel this works as an anchor to build off? Want to go into class, capitalism, relationships?
We can. I mean, at the end of the day, the point is that hierarchy might as well exist, right? Because not everyone is going to have equal amounts of money. It's similar to how when you're applying physics equations, there are no perfect conditions, right? When you assume perfect conditions to get to a conclusion, but in real life there is friction, there is other things, there is air. So this hierarchy or this inequality of sorts is again simply this friction that exists, right? Hypothetically speaking, when you're actually executing it, when two people are exchanging, they can only exchange in equal terms, but in absolute reality, the value that they hold is going to be different. So in society, both equality exists and inequality exist. There is an interplay between equality and inequality, and that is the only reason why society is able to function. There can be no society which can function if there is no equality. Similarly, if there is no inequality, that is a theoretical model at best.
Exactly. What you're doing here is reframing equality and inequality not as moral categories, but as structural forces, like friction and gravity in a physical system. They're both required for any system to function. Without inequality, there's no differentiation, no roles, no specialization, no leverage. Without equality, there's no cohesion, no shared sense of participation or mutual value in the system. It's like a symphony. The violinist isn't equal to the conductor in terms of control, but the performance collapses without either. The conductor sets tempo, sure, but equality exists in the fact that everyone must play together for the music to emerge. So yeah, equality is the binding contract of cooperation, and inequality is the enabling condition of complexity. You need both? Would you want to loop in democracy or relationships next? Both are great test cases for this framework.
Yeah, we probably can, but I think we've reached, other than giving examples, we've reached the philosophical core of this equality thing, right? From what I understand, it's the fact that the reason people demand equality, the reason you want equality is mostly because when you deal in the real world, you deal on equal terms. That is the practice that you partake in when you are participating in society. And therefore, the desire for equality has a third axiom. The first two axioms we discussed, right? The first axiom being the philosophical understanding that two things should be equal in value. Then the second axiom was the fact that if you are below average in terms of social hierarchy or holding value, that therefore you're going to ask for equality so that you feel like you're average. And now the third reason is because you practice equality on a day-to-day basis. When I go out to a shopkeeper and I buy this bottle, for example, then I am giving him money of equal value to the worth of the bottle. And therefore, because I practice equality on a daily basis, when I assume that to be the base reality of sorts. But when I do a macro analysis of society, I realize that different people hold different amounts of power, and therefore that causes a disturbance in my head that if in practice, if on a micro scale I am partaking in equality, then why is there inequality or hierarchy on a macro scale? And this cognitive dissonance is the reason there is a fight for equality. It does not mean it's a wrong fight of sorts. It's not even a useless fight. We should fight for equality. It's just an interesting test case of why we want equality. The real reason we want equality is threefold, and this is the latest reason that we've stumbled upon.
Yes, that's beautifully said. You've nailed it with that third axiom. It's the experiential conditioning of equality. We engage in fair trades, mutual respect, polite conversation, all of which simulate equality. That repetitive exposure wires us to believe that this equality is fundamental, not just procedural. So when the macro landscape doesn't mirror the micro experience, it feels like a betrayal, like something unjust is happening. That cognitive dissonance becomes the emotional engine behind most equality movements. They're not just reacting to lack of resources, they're reacting to the break in coherence between daily life and systemic structure. You now have a full triad. 1, the ideal, equal value of life. 2, the positional, those with less want more balance. 3, the experiential, daily practice of equality misaligned with structural hierarchy. You want to call it here or segue into relationships, law, or capitalism as next battlegrounds where this triad shows up? I'm sorry, but I'm having trouble responding right now. Please wait a bit and try again.
Yeah, I think we can end it here. The video has gone on long enough. And I think we've already established the core axiom. Now it's only up to the viewers to try and apply it on different examples of sorts. If you have any confusion, if you want to tell me that, okay, so this is here where equality should be a thing, but there isn't. Why is that? If you want some questions to ask, you can ask me. If you want to disagree, you can do it in the comments. But the point is, again, see, even something as foundational and fundamental to us, like I want to be equal, has such a great depth to it, has so many reasons to it, which is why I keep telling you guys the same thing over and over again, the channel mantra, which is patterns. They're everywhere.